covering the recoil adjustments specifically for the weapons that were addressed in these patch notes, right? And we're going to be covering the Cold War AK-47, the OTS-9. As we can see here, we're going to be covering the Light Machine Gun Alpha, which is the Stoner. We're also going to be comparing that with the RPD. We're also going to be talking about the AUG, because these barrel attachment updates might impact them a little bit and might make them a little more appealing for those seeking out something different to use in Warzone, right? So let's go ahead and get right into the Cold War AK-47. So they actually said that they had adjusted the recoil in a way that sounded like a nerf. However, they adjusted it in a way that made it easier to use. Before, that curvature you had, the one you see when it kicks up and then it goes kind of right and then back to the left, that was actually a little more aggressive, and now it seems that it made it easier, and it gives you actually in some scenarios it gives you a recoil that kind of just shoots straight up at the end. So it became way easier to use now. So the Cold War AK-47 is probably going to start being a little more desirable for people. Maybe those fans of the AMAX will start enjoying the Cold War AK-47 a little bit more. So the OTS-9, being an SMG, and because it's being used for nothing other than close quarters, considering now that they nerfed it a little bit more if anything, the recoil, it kicks up a little more aggressively, but to be honest, it's nothing to be worried about, because you're going to be using this thing, you know, anywhere from maybe 10 to 20 meters. You might feel that recoil at 20 meters, but apart from that point, it shouldn't really be an issue. So let's talk about the QBZ here. So I went ahead and compared the QBZ, which is a recoil pattern you're seeing on the left side, kind of just kicking up and to the left. That's been the QBZ's pattern forever, and they increased it slightly. However, what they really did was just increase how aggressive the vertical part was. So now it kicks a little bit further up, and they actually took the Krig and brought it in line with the QBZ, and we're gonna see that in a couple of images here. But on the right side here, we're looking at the Stoner's new recoil pattern. If you knew the Stoner before, the Stoner would kick up, just straight vertical, no side to side, nothing weird. It was just straight up. That's why it was so easy to use. That's why everyone was starting to kind of catch on to it. They adjusted the recoil for it a little bit, and they gave it a little bit of a kind of side to side, but then they retweaked that recoil, which happened in this patch note, and now it does have this curvature that you're seeing right here. It kicks up and to the left a little bit, and then it kind of just curves over, and it's similar to a lot of the patterns that you will find for the Cold War, well, this one being an LMG, but for the Cold War rifles. And it's by no means difficult to use, but it does change up the way the weapon is overall, because the recoil pattern is essentially now different, right? Now moving on to the next one here, I went ahead and looked at the best setups for the QBZ and the Stoner. So I went ahead and tried it out with the foregrip, and as you see, the QBZ, it just shoots up and slightly to the left. It doesn't really change it much, and we're going to talk about the class setups here shortly. In the case of the Stoner, you can see that it really does reduce that curvature, that new curvature it has. It reduces it quite a bit. So the foregrip might be a viable option if you want to go back to something close to that kind of straight up recoil pattern. But there you have it for the foregrip. Let's move into the field agent grip. This is what everyone out there is going to tell you. Oh, this is the meta. This is the best setup for it. As you can see for the QBZ, it keeps the same horizontal. It still kicks to the left slightly, but it does reduce the vertical recoil by about, I don't know, 6 bullets if I'd have to count it. It is truly a negligible difference if you look at it that way, but if you feel you're struggling with that vertical kick, now that people might be looking into the QBZ a little bit more, which I really don't think so. The thing is that I've always used the QBZ from the beginning, and the weird thing with the QBZ is that as you are, continuously shooting at someone, once the weapon has to readjust, the readjustment part feels a little too aggressive for you to kind of find your target again while being scoped in. So this is for longer range engagements. And what would happen is that as you waited for your weapon to readjust, you would feel like it really came down hard. And this might happen with the Krig now because they've leveled the recoil, so it can be in line with the QBZ, but we'll only have to see that with time. I'll have to do further testing to see if that kind of recoil readjustment or the kick readjustment hits as hard as the QBZ, but I think that was the main factor why people were not using the QBZ. So we're gonna see as time goes by and people start using this new recoil, the Krig, or if they change up to the QBZ, how they're gonna feel this interaction. But the field agent grip here cut a little bit of the QBZ's vertical recoil, as you can see, and in the case of the stoner, it also cut it down a little bit. As you see, the kick over to the right that it now has is not as reduced as with the foregrip, but it's still a very easy to manage recoil pattern. So now looking at the SFOD speed grip, right, or the final underbarrel that you can place on the assault rifles or LMGs, except in the Farah. The Farah has a weird setup of the underbarrels, but the QBZ, as you can see, once again kicks to the left. It has a weird right to left kind of situation going on at the beginning, which is kind of weird. The underbarrels do have different interactions from time to time, but it's still a very easy to control recoil, right? And in the case of the stoner on the right side, you can see that you can still see kind of that new pattern, right? It kicks over to the left very slightly, and then it kicks over to the right, and then kind of readjusts slowly. So in the AK-47 for Cold War, the setup is still the same thing. And I was just reiterating the pattern here just so you guys could really see it. Again, it received a supposed nerf, but this recoil is now way easier to handle than it was before. It wasn't that difficult before because you would only have a section where your weapon would kind of make this half moon or this type of C pattern, and it would throw you off a little bit because it was a little more aggressive. Now what they did is the weapon now kicks up, kicks to the left, to the right, a little bit to the left, and then it kicks up in most scenarios based on the many times I tested it out. But it is an easier to use weapon now, so keep that in mind and check the Cold War AK-47 out, because I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So I went ahead, as I said, I placed the QBZ and the Krig side to side here to see exactly what was adjusted in the Krig's recoil. Now the pattern itself was, I would say, completely adjusted, because now you can see it's similar to the Stoner's recoil. Actually, it kicks to the left ever so slightly, and then it starts readjusting, straight vertical pretty much. The Krig is now easier to use or to control. It just kicks harder upward, so it's personal preference at this point. These two patterns here, the left one is the QBZs and the right one is the Krigs. So now they both kick up at the exact same, I guess, magnitude, and now it's just about personal preference or damage profiles, which the Krig got a nerf. We'd have to see, maybe wait for JGod or Exclusive Ace to make a video on the details with these weapons, but recoil wise, these are now pretty much the same thing. In the LMG department, for the Stoner and the RPD, I went ahead and placed these side to side as well. The RPD received a recoil nerf in the last weapon update, and now it was way worse than the Stoner, and it still is. They did extend the Stoner's recoil vertically a little bit more, by about, I would say, maybe 33%, and now it kicks up a little longer, but the RPD is still worse. Not in my opinion, this is just what we're seeing here on the screen, right? And now both of them have this weird side to side kick, which I never saw before in the testing I did for recoil. So both of these are, if anything, a little bit harder to use at range or at very long ranges, because they have this weird side to side here that might throw you off target or might make you miss a couple of bullets, which I think is good. That makes it, you know, not completely broken, or it won't turn them into a meta, because you're still going to be missing shots. Even so, if people do use it, it's still going to be a little bit more unforgiving at those very, very long ranges. So that's great. I think that's good to have there, a little more leveled out in the LMG department. If they could adjust the RPD's damage profile to be a little more in line with the stoner, or bring the stoner down to be in line with the RPD, I think that would be way better, because there is something with the stoner that might throw some people off if they had the same damage profile, which is the bullet thickness. When you're shooting the stoner, the bullets really look like they come from a light machine gun because they look so thick. I feel that visual bullet thickness is not the same on the RPD. Maybe this is just my perspective on it, but I feel that the RPD gives you way cleaner line of sight when you're shooting at someone. So maybe that could turn some people away from the stoner and into the RPD, making the meta a little bit more viable, right? Or not viable, but a little more varied. So there you have it for the LMG department. Now let's go ahead and talk about some setups here. Now the first thing I want to cover is the Cold War AK-47. Now the setup for this is pretty much going to be the same thing as it was before, because again, if anything, the AK-47 got a recoil buff because it's now way easier to use. So we're going to be using the Groove Suppressor here. We'll be using the 20-inch Spetsnaz RPK barrel, and use whatever you want there. For the underbarrel, we're going to be using the Spetsnaz grip. It really just cuts off that vertical, although you could start testing out with the horizontal or Spetsnaz speed grip if that's something you want me to do. I can definitely go ahead and check that out. Because of the way the recoil is working now, these might be a little more beneficial if you only want to worry about vertical control. But to be honest, Spetsnaz grip will just give you the best control overall. Magazine side, you can use whatever you want. If you're using the Cold War AK-47 as an SMG, I do recommend the Groove Mag clamp, because it reloads so quickly, and I don't think a lot of people know that, but it might be a niche situation. I sometimes use it for my long range engagements as well, because it's just fun to be able to reload so quickly and get right back into it. And 30 bullets if you're not missing your shots with the AK, which is not really difficult to control anyway. I think it's a really fun time to have, so check it out if you feel you want to have something different in the mix here. But if not, use the 45 round speed mag, bake like 60 round. It's really up to you. I'll leave the Groove Mag clamp here. The optic, I'll go with the 3X. Nothing different to use there. I leave the default reticle because it's just very clean. I enjoy it, and I like the way it works on this, you know, higher kick assault rifle. So the OTS setup, just as an extra clip here for you, I use the Groove Suppressor Task Force mounted flashlight, PDV 40 round fast mag to take advantage of that very quick reload time, and the no stock for that sprint to fire time. So this is my setup here. This is my favorite class so far, so I have it at the top, right? So let's talk about the QBZ here. The setup for it, which is going to be pretty much the same for the Krig, and this is based on your personal preference, but you're going to be using the Agency Suppressor, the Task Force barrel. You could also use the Ranger, but the Task Force works perfectly fine, and it gives you that horizontal control, so it keeps that slight left pattern consistent. Use the 3X sight. The 4X also works very well with the QBZ, I think, and with a lot of the ARs and LMGs anyway, but you can stick to the 3X if you want. Magazine, you can go with the 45 round speed mag or the STANAG 60. There was a benefit you had with the salvo, but it seems that it was fixed. It seems that it's fixed now, so no reason in using that unless you don't mind the ADS penalty. So I'll go with this one, although it looks very ugly. Nothing I can do with that department other than buy a blueprint, but yeah, that's another story. So in regards to the underbarrel, you can choose to not have an underbarrel on this one, and maybe, I don't know, run a stock for quick sprint to fire time, or maybe ADS firing movement speed, which might be a little bit better to dodge bullets if you feel comfortable with that left recoil pattern. But if you want to control that vertical part, which again, for people that haven't used the QBZ before, it is a little bit awkward when you're challenging people at way longer ranges. The field agent grip doesn't magically fix this issue for you, but it can help it out a little. So if you feel you're gonna struggle with that vertical, then just put the field agent grip on. If not, maybe try something different. Maybe, you know, put a serpent grip on it, a speed grip if you don't want the sprint to fire time penalty. but it's really up to you, or laser, whatever else you prefer. Let's just leave the field agent grip on for now, just for those newer players on this weapon. For the Krig, similar thing, agency suppressor. We're going to use the final barrel here because of its damage nerf. You do want that effective damage range extended as much as possible. The magazine, you can go with the 45 round speed, or I'll just go with the 60. Go with the 3X, and again, this is a very similar issue to the QBZ. Now it's kicking up quite a bit, so I'm not sure how it's going to feel in people's hands now. But as you discover that, I would say if you find it difficult to control that vertical recoil, then just go with the field agent grip. If not, try out an SFOD speed grip or the foregrip to reduce that, new recoil pattern it has, if you feel it's difficult to control, which I highly doubt it's going to be the case. But I'm pretty sure people are going to deviate to this setup right here, so there you have it. Now, for the LMGs, for the Stoner, agency suppressor, you're going to be using the task force to get the maximum bullet velocity and damage range. You can use the 3X Optic. Some people like the Royal Cross 4X as well. That's personal preference. And in this case, because of how the pattern is working, it's still very easy to control. So if you want to reduce that new kick to the right that it has and the kick to the left that it has at the beginning, maybe use one of the foregrip or SFOD speed grip. If you just want to have kind of a consistent controlled recoil, then maybe have the field agent grip. But to be honest, I think I'm still going to be running this without an underbarrel. I like to run the 120 mag fast mag, or the 120 round speed mag, and then add maybe a serpent grip, or even the Raider pad, which increases that sprint to fire time. I don't care about the hip fire accuracy because I'm not going to be using this for that anytime soon. And then you can play with these attachments. I think it makes it very fun to be able to kind of mix and match these things. Maybe not even add this. Some people don't mind the amount of bullets it has by default. So again, personal preference, but you can play around with these attachments a little bit. The three up here are the main ones, I guess, are more comfortable to use, right? Now, going with the RPD, similar setup, cruise suppressor, task force barrel, 3X optic. Again, the optic is your personal preference, and then you can do exactly the same thing here. This one kicks up again way more than the Stoner. It is less than the QBZ and less than the Krig. So if you don't have a problem with those, then you shouldn't have a problem with the RPD. And again, you can choose the mag size you want. I'll go, maybe a fast mag here, and you can again set up whatever you want to kind of spice things up with it. Serpent grip, I'll leave the fast mag. Maybe something like this is something I would use. And again, mix and match as you feel best. You can also maybe use a patrol grip to move a little bit quicker with it, or I don't know, you can spice things up here. That's the good thing. But these two attachments are the main thing you want to rock with. Now, I'll give you an extra loadout here. Because they did tweak a little bit the tactical rifles, let's talk about the AUG here. I haven't really done a lot of playtime testing with it, and we still have to see the damage profiles, or kind of go back to the damage profiles, because I haven't used this in the longest. But likely you want to go with the agency silencer. I would say if you're a fan of the default optic the AUG has, then you can run with it. The problem that I find with that default optic is the fact that it has a lot of idle sway, and that's really what I don't like. I don't feel you can stay on target very well with that sway. So if you use the 3X, it usually gives you a clear picture, and I don't feel the sway is as visible with the 3X. So you can go with that. Magazine side is completely up to your preference. Let's take the 45 round speed mag, why not? And so here's where you can mix and match some things, right? So you can go with the task force, which gives you the best bullet velocity and effective damage range. But of course, we're talking about the fire rate. If you run the fire rate, or the titanium barrel for the fire rate, which is the one that gives you the best benefit, the rapid fire is also an option. You could maybe counteract the effective damage range nerf that it kind of gives it with one of these sights. Maybe use the Ember sighting point and increase that effective damage range. Or maybe you can go to the rapid fire attachment and keep the Ember sighting, so you might not get as fast of a fire rate, but you're still not losing out on effective damage range, right? If you feel you can't control this new recoil pattern that they have on it. Maybe use a field agent grip for it. I wouldn't recommend the front grip or the SFOD speed grip because this really doesn't have much side to side bounce, because every burst just kind of kicks you up. There is no horizontal recoil or negligible amounts of it. So I think this might be a good idea for a different type of setup if you want to try the AUG out. So keep that one in mind. For the DMR as an SMG, I think you can now take even more advantage of it. It seems the Type 63 was nerfed, but the DMR, I heard J God explained a little bit about it, that it was still viable if you were hitting your shots in the right places. Center of mass was his recommendation, but if we got the buff to this titanium barrel, this is what I would run. I would run definitely that titanium barrel. I would go with the silencer because I'm not going to be extending my range as much. If anything, I'm gonna run the 30 round mag because I've tried it with the 20 round and you just run out of bullets way too quickly for what I would consider your liking. So after that, I go with the no stock. I just want to have the maximum sprint to fire time. You could also go with the Raider stock, but the no stock gives you the maximum mobility possible, so I use that one. And then you could go with a laser sight if you really want to maximize that movement, or you could go with a serpent wrap, which the sprint to fire time doesn't affect you as much because of that no stock, or just go with the speed tape because this one has no downsides and you just get that aim down sight benefit. So this is an extra setup you could try out, a little bit spicier to your gameplay if you wish. And with that information covered, I hope that this was all helpful for you. And I know I went a lot into detail with the changes that happened here, but what I try to focus on is the recoil pattern, the recoil adjustments that these updates bring to the weapons. So I hope you all enjoyed today's video. I thank you once again for clicking on it. If you do enjoy this information, I bring you this every single time it's necessary for your better understanding of the game. So thank you so much for watching the video until the end. Hit that like button if you did like it. Hit that subscribe button if you do want to subscribe to it. And leave a comment down below if you want me to test anything else, or if you enjoyed the video, or if you didn't. Until next time, take care out there. Sauce Time Gaming.